The Great Chamber of the Galactic Council was built to inspire fear. It was a place where the rulers of 100 star systems decided the fate of entire worlds. And its ceiling rose so high that the walls disappeared into shadow. Columns of black stone held the weight of the dome above, each carved with the history of the galaxy's victories, but never its crimes. Tonight the chamber was silent, lit only by the faint blue light of the central holographic table around it sat. The most powerful beings in the galaxy, their faces calm, their voices low, their expressions unreadable. In the air above the table, a recording flickered to life. It was Earth. The image showed the blue and green planet hanging in the darkness of space. Clouds drifted lazily across its surface, the continents bright in the sunlight. Then the light changed. A thin beam, white and pure, cut down from the void, striking the planet's atmosphere. The beam widened, grew brighter, and then, in silence, the surface began to burn. Cities vanished in bursts of fire. Oceans boiled. The planets. Color shifted from green to gray. The beam moved again, carving across the continents with surgical precision, erasing everything in its path. It lasted less than an hour. When the beam faded, Earth was no longer a living world. It was Ashdod. No one in the chamber flinched. The recording ended, replaced by the cold voice of the Council's archivist. Operation Final Dusk, carried out 2 standard decades ago. Human population reduced by 94%. Remaining. Survivors classified as non-threat. Status closed. The head of the Council, a tall silver-skinned being named Vedran, leaned back in his seat and steepled his long fingers. A closed matter, he agreed. His voice carried no emotion. Only the weight of law. Humans were a chaotic, violent species. They would have threatened the order of the galaxy. We removed them before they could rise too far. They are extinct, another counselor said flatly. History will remember them only as a cautionary tale. Vedran allowed himself the smallest hint of a smile. History will remember only what we choose to preserve. Far from the council chamber, in the dark reaches of uncharted space, a different kind of meeting was taking place. Deep inside an asteroid hollowed into a fortress, a fleet gathered. The rock's surface bristled with hidden weapons, its interior lit by the dull glow of engines warming for war. In the command hall, a man stood before a massive viewport. His hair was streaked with silver, his face lined by years of hardship. But his eyes burned like a star. His name was Admiral Kane, and he was human. For 2 decades, survivors of Earth's destruction had lived like ghosts, scattered across the farthest corners of space. Some had been taken as slaves, some hidden by sympathetic traders, and some had been driven underground, burrowing into dead moons and forgotten stations. They had been hunted, betrayed, and forced into the kind of life no child should endure. But they had not died. Piece by piece, year by year, they had rebuilt. They had stolen alien technology, adapted it, made it their own, and they had waited. Kane's voice cut through the hall, steady and cold. Today, we end the waiting. Today, we stop being ghosts. The officers around him, men and women, forged in hardship, straightened in their chairs. The room vibrated faintly as the engines of their warships roared to life. Ships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen were now ready for war. The hulls were black and jagged, swallowing light instead of reflecting it. Their weapons were hidden behind layered armor, and their engines burned with a strange, unnatural blue. No alien could have built them. They were born of human desperation, human anger, and human genius. On the far edge of known space, a mining station drifted above a frozen moon. Its crew was a mix of alien species, mostly bored, mostly drunk, living out their days in a place the galaxy had forgotten. Then the alarms began to scream. The station's sensor officer scrambled to his console, hands shaking as he scanned the readings. Something massive had entered real space, not one ship but dozens. Their signatures didn't match anything in the Council's database. The officer's voice cracked as he reported to the station commander. They're coming straight for the inner systems. Their designs, they look old. but not any design I've seen. The commander took one look at the readings and ordered a distress signal sent to the nearest patrol fleet. The message could be sent, the station's sensors went dead. The viewport darkened, and for a moment, the frozen moon below seemed to vanish. Then a shape blocked out the stars. It was a ship. No, not just a ship. A fortress in motion. Its hull stretched for miles, bristling with weapon ports. The mining crew could feel the vibration of its engines, even through the vacuum. The stations. Lights flickered, and the intercom crackled with a voice that sent chills through every being who heard it. We remember. In the council's chambers, the report came minutes later. The patrol fleet assigned to the sector had been annihilated in less than 6 minutes. The attackers had vanished into hyperspace before reinforcements could arrive. No survivors. Debris large enough to study. It's just a faint, lingering transmission repeating the same 2 words. We remember. The council moved quickly to suppress the news, labeling it as pirate activity. Official channels broadcast stories of isolated attacks and security incidents, but the leaked footage told a different story. The images spread faster than they could be censored. Massive black ships tearing through alien warships like paper, moving with deadly precision and then vanishing as if swallowed by the dark. On frontier worlds and deep space stations, whispers began to spread. Some said the attackers were a lost alien species. Others claimed they were machines. But in the quietest corners, in the places where old history had not been erased, one word began to return: humans. In an old, dusty library on the world of Nyraz, a young alien historian named Yeril sat frozen before a flickering holoscreen. She had seen the footage. She knew the shape of those ships. Her great-grandmother had spoken of them, back when humans still traded among the stars. Yeril had been told those stories were dangerous lies, that the humans were gone.
Oh.
But now she knew the truth. They had not been destroyed, they had been waiting. Across the asteroid fortress, Admiral Kane stood in the command pit of the flagship Vengeance. Around him, the hum of power filled the air, and the crew moved with silent efficiency. Kane's eyes traced the holographic map before him, the map of the galaxy. At its center, glowing in the deep blue of the display, was the capital of the Galactic Council. He reached out and touched it, and the hologram flared red. "They erased our world," Kane said quietly, almost to himself. "Now we erase their illusion of safety." His second-in-command, Captain Vale, stepped forward. "First target?" Kane's mouth curved into something between a smile and a snarl. "Their shipyard at Jaraxxus. It builds the fleet that keeps their worlds obedient. If we destroy it, we don't just hurt them, we make them afraid." Vale nodded, then signaled the fleet. Across the black holes of the human warships, running lights snapped into formation. Engines flared. One by one, the ships slid into hyperspace, leaving the asteroid fortress in silence once more. In the great chamber of the Galactic Council, Badrine stared at the growing pile of reports on his desk. Unconfirmed sightings, missing fleets, civilian unrest on frontier worlds. He could feel the pressure building like a storm beyond the horizon. Still, he dismissed the fear in the room. "No, they're not human," he told his advisors. "Are gone. What we face now is something else. Pirates, insurgents, perhaps a coalition of fringe species, nothing more." But deep down, a shadow of doubt touched him. He had seen that leaked footage, the way the black ships moved, the way their weapons struck with brutal precision. It was not the way the galaxy fought. It was something older. Something angrier and far away in the endless dark. Admiral Kane's fleet raced toward its first target, engines screaming through hyperspace. Every man and woman aboard knew what they were about to do. They had no illusions of mercy. They had carried the memory of fire for 2 decades, and now they would return it to the ones who lit it. The galaxy had forgotten the humans. But the humans had never forgotten the galaxy. The Vengeance's CUM system came alive with the voice of Captain Vale. "Admiral, all ships report ready. Estimated time to Jaraxxus, for hours." Kane looked out at the streaking lights of hyperspace, and in his mind, He saw Earth as it had been before the fire, oceans stretching to the horizon, green forests breathing in the wind, cities alive. With laughter and light, let the memory burn inside him until it was almost too much to bear. Wait. Then he spoke, his voice carrying through every ship in the fleet. Remember who we are? Remember what they did? Remember we will not stop. Until they can never do it again. 4 hours later, alarms screamed across the Jaraxxus shipyard. The war had begun. The Jaraxxus shipyard hung in orbit like a crown of steel, a ring of colossal platforms joined by shining corridors and spires. From a distance, it looked almost peaceful, a great work of engineering suspended against the black canvas of space. But up close, the truth revealed itself. Massive skeletal frames of half-built warships loomed over the platforms, swarms of workers and drones crawling over them like insects on a carcass. Engines were being mounted, weapons calibrated, shields tested. The hum of industry filled the void. Jaraxxus was the beating heart of the Council's military power. A place where ships were not just built, they were born into the service of domination. Inside the central control tower, Director Sorvak reviewed the latest production reports. With the calm precision of a man who believed his station untouchable, the Jaraxxus defenses were unmatched, an outer perimeter of heavy gun platforms, inner layers of intercept fighters, and the largest garrison fleet in the sector. Sorvak had lived through border wars and pirate raids. Had watched council ships tear apart any who dared approach without permission. No one attacked Jaraxxus and lived, so when the first alarm sounded, Sorvak didn't even look up. Another false reading? He asked without interest, adjusting the holographic display before him. The duty officer frowned. No, Director. These are real, multiple warp breaches at the edge of the system. Unknown signatures. Sorvak's voice hardened. Unknown. There's no such thing in council space, but there was. At the far edge of the Jaraxxus system, space rippled like water, disturbed by an unseen hand. One by one, black warships dropped out of hyperspace, their hulls swallowing the light of the distant sun. They moved in silence, no flashing lights, no identification codes. Their engines flared only long enough to bring them into a loose formation, then went cold. The silence was worse than a battle cry. It felt deliberate, like the pause before a predator strikes. On the flagship Vengeance, Admiral Kane stood with his hands clasped behind his back, studying the holographic display of the Jaraxxus defenses. Captain Vale approached, her expression grim. Their scanners have seen us. They're powering up weapons. Good, Kane said simply. Let them prepare. Fear sharpens the memory. The first council ships moved to intercept a wall of gleaming white hulls bristling with guns. They opened fire at maximum range, beams of energy streaking through the void toward the human fleet. Shields flared blue as the shots struck, but the human formation didn't break, didn't scatter. Kane gave no order to return fire. Ships simply kept moving forward, absorbing the punishment like stone cliffs against a storm. Inside the Jaraxxus control tower, Sorvak watched the incoming formation with growing disbelief. Why aren't they maneuvering? No one takes a direct assault like this. The duty officer's voice was tight with fear. Director, they're targeting us, not the fleet. Us. It began with a single ripple, the faint heat signature of weapons charging. Then the human fleet opened fire. But it wasn't the wide arcing beams of council ships. These weapons spat, compressed bursts of pure, blinding energy, each shot hitting with surgical precision. Entire council cruisers erupted in fireballs before their shields could adjust. The human weapons seemed to punch through reality itself. Tearing armor and hull in the same breath, the Jaraxxus garrison fleet tried to close the distance. Desperate to bring the humans into close combat. That was a mistake. The black warships moved like nothing Sorvak had ever seen. They shifted position instantly, vanishing and reappearing at impossible angles, as if space itself bent to their will. Council ships found themselves firing at empty coordinates only to be torn apart from behind seconds later. On the Vengeance, Captain Vale relayed reports from across the fleet. 17 enemy vessels destroyed. Minimal resistance. No human casualties. Kane's voice was quiet but sharp. Could keep it that way. Every life we keep is one more they can't take from us again. As the battle above raged, a second. Human force emerged from the shadows below the shipyard's ring. Small, fast ships darted between the support struts, planting charges at critical points. The workers never saw them coming, and when they did, it was too late. Explosions tore through the lower platforms, sending half-built warships tumbling into the void. The massive ring itself shuddered under the strain. Director Sorvak was still barking orders when the Vengeance's main guns turned toward the control tower for a heartbeat. He looked straight into the cold black barrels, as if seeing the face of a ghost. Then the tower disappeared in a flash of white light, in the silence that followed. The Jaraxxus shipyard, pride of the Council fleet, split apart. Entire sections crumbled away, spinning slowly into the dark. The remaining Council ships scattered, some fleeing, some surrendering. Human warships moved methodically through the wreckage, targeting only military craft and installations. Civilian vessels were left untouched, though not without fear. Every witness would carry the image of the Black Fleet with them, and they would tell the story. On the Vengeance's bridge, Kane stood in the stillness after the guns went quiet. He knew the Council would send reinforcements. He knew this was only the first move, but it was a beginning. He turned to his crew. "Transmit," he ordered. A young comms officer nodded and sent the signal. "Cross every open frequency. Cross every world and range." The same voice echoed, cold, clear, and unmistakably human. "You took our world. Now we'll take your sky." In the Council's capital, the message hit like a thunderclap. Entire ministries froze mid-sentence as the transmission played. In the military command halls, officers looked at one another in disbelief, and in the deepest chambers of power, Vedrine listened to the human voice without expression, but his silver fingers tightened slightly against the arm of his chair. "That," said softly, "was not a pirate." But the damage was already done. Across the galaxy, the whispers grew louder. The lost species had returned, and they were not begging for a place at the table. They were coming to burn the table down. On a distant outpost world, Yarrow, the young historian who had seen the leaked footage, stood in a crowded market square as the human message played over the public comms. Aliens argued, laughed nervously, or dismissed it as propaganda. But she knew better. This was no rumor. This was history breaking free from the lies that had buried it, and she could not stop the shiver that ran down her spine. Back aboard the Vengeance, Kane walked the length of the bridge, his mind already moving beyond Jaraxxus. The galaxy's great powers would try to rally. They would send fleets larger than anything the humans could field, but Kane wasn't planning to meet them in open war, not yet. This was a campaign of fear, and fear was a weapon that didn't need numbers. Captain Vale approached quietly. "Where to next, Admiral?" Kane's eyes went to the holographic map again. Dozens of red marks now glowed where shipyards, command hubs, and supply depots fed the Council's military machine. He tapped one, far deeper into their territory, a place that mattered not just to their war, but to their pride. "The capital will come later," Kane said. "First, we take their breath away." Studied the target and nodded. "We'll be in range in 6 days." Kane's gaze lingered on the hologram, the red mark burning in the center like an ember. "Good," he said. "Let them think Jaraxxus was a lucky strike. Let them believe they still control the stars. When they open their eyes, I want them to realize the stars are ours." And somewhere, in the corridors of the Galactic Council, Vedrine was already calling emergency meetings, already ordering fleets to positions they thought would be safe. But deep inside, he knew the humans weren't coming for territory. They were coming for something far more dangerous. They were coming for revenge. The Jaraxxus strike had burned through the galaxy's news feeds like a flare in darkness. No matter how hard the Council tried to bury it under official denials, the images kept returning. Black warships slicing through fleets, the shipyard breaking apart like dry bone, the voice that had carried across the stars, "You took our world. Now we'll take your sky." On frontier worlds, people whispered of the humans as avengers from old legends. On wealthy core worlds, officials dismissed. It is exaggerated rebel propaganda, but their eyes betrayed unease. And in the farthest reaches, where miners and traders lived by their own rules, the story was told around every fire, every tavern table. Humanity was alive. Humanity was fighting back. The Galactic Council, stung and humiliated, moved quickly. To show its strength, orders rippled through the great military fleets. Mobilize, hunt, destroy. In less than a week, dozens of war groups fanned out from the capital, their engines blazing as they swept through border sectors. They searched abandoned stations, interrogated merchants, and chased false sightings that led them into empty space. But Kane and his fleet were always somewhere else, always one step ahead. In the dim glow of the Vengeance's war room, holographic maps shifted constantly as reports flowed in. Admiral Kane stood at the center, one hand resting on the table, his eyes sharp as steel. Around him, his officers tracked fleet movements, marked targets, and studied weaknesses. Captain Vale leaned over the map and tapped a blinking red icon. Council Fleet Group, Gamma 7. 6 heavy cruisers, 2 carriers, 30 strike craft. Patrolling here right on the supply lane between Veltris and the core systems. Kane's gaze narrowed. Those carriers keep half the northern sectors under control. Take them out, and the rest of their ships starve for fuel and ammo. Vale hesitated. They'll expect us to hit isolated targets. Gamma 7 is too close to the main fleet. If they call for help, they won't get the chance. Kane cut in, his voice low but certain. We strike hard, we strike fast, and we vanish before they understand what's happening. Hours later, Gamma 7's ships drifted along the black trade lanes, their hulls glowing faintly in the cold light of a nearby gas giant. Pilots lounged in their cockpits, engineers ran quiet diagnostics, and the captains chatted over encrypted channels about the Juraxis rumors. None of them noticed the distortion in the void above until it was too late. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace like shadows falling across a wall. There was no warning hail, no demand for surrender, only the sudden flash of weapons. Fire. A spear of blue-white energy tore through the first carrier's shields, punching into its engine core. The explosion rolled outward in a silent bloom, sending burning fragments spinning into the void. Strike craft scrambled from the second carrier, but the humans were already among them. Sleek black interceptors cut through the alien fighters, like razors through paper, their weapons locking on with unerring precision. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Captain Vale relayed updates, her voice a calm rhythm against the chaos. First carrier destroyed, second carrier engines disabled. Enemy cruisers attempting flanking maneuver, break them, Kane ordered. The Vengeance rolled, its guns swiveling to unleash a broadside of railfire. Slugs accelerated to a fraction of light speed ripped straight through a cruiser's hull, exiting out the far side in a shower of molten metal. Another cruiser tried to retreat, but 2 human corvettes caught it in a crossfire and reduced it to drifting wreckage. Minutes later, the battle was over. Not a single human ship had been lost. The second carrier's surviving crew was taken aboard human transports, not to be executed, but to spread the fear themselves when they were set free. Kane knew the value of witnesses by the time the Council heard of the attack. Gamma 7 was gone, and the humans had already struck somewhere else. Over the next month, the Black Fleet became a storm without a center. One day they were destroying a military outpost in the Orlan Belt. The next they were torching a shield generator on the agricultural moon of Vrilla. Every blow was precise, targeted to cripple the Council's war machine without wasting a shot. Supply depots burned, communication relays vanished into fire, and entire sectors went dark. And yet the humans did more than destroy. On worlds long crushed under Council taxes and laws, they left food, medicine, strange devices that restored power to failing colonies. Some called them saviors, others called them liars, but all agreed they were changing the shape of the war in the capital. Vadreen paced the Council chamber like a caged predator. The silver sheen of his skin reflected the cold lights overhead, his long fingers tapping against the armrest. Around him, lesser counselors argued in panicked tones. We must escalate. Deploy the planetary shields to all major worlds. Authorize the construction of more dreadnoughts. It will take years to replace Jiraxis. Another snapped. And in that time, the humans will bleed us dry. Vedrine silenced them with a single gesture. This is not a war of fleets. It is a war of will. The humans fight like they are already dead. That makes them dangerous. He turned to the room's far corner, where a shadow waited. We will use Project Halcyon. A murmur swept the chamber. The name was forbidden in public record, a program of genetic manipulation meant to create soldiers beyond anything the galaxy had seen. Soldiers taken, trained, and rebuilt from prisoners of war. And though most of the chamber did not know, some of those prisoners had been human. Far from the capital, Yarrel the historian had become a fugitive in her own world. The council had begun arresting those who spoke too openly about the humans, and she had spoken far too often. Now she traveled. Aboard a smuggler's freighter, hiding in the cargo bay, clutching a small data core. Inside it were fragments of records, proof of Earth's destruction, and proof of the council's lies. She didn't know if the humans would want her help, but she knew they would need the truth. Somewhere out there, Kane's fleet was fighting, and Yarl was determined to reach them. The humans' next target was bold, almost reckless. A fuel hub orbiting the star Calthus supplied dozens of council fleets in the central sectors. The hub was heavily guarded with multiple defense platforms, and a minefield stretching for kilometers in every direction. Captain Vale stared at the tactical display with a frown. This is different, Admiral. They'll see us coming hours before we get into range. That's the idea, Kane said. We want them to see us. We want them to call for help. Vale studied him for a moment before realization dawned. You're drawing in reinforcements. Kane's lips curled slightly. Not when they arrive. We'll be behind them. Yet the plan unfolded like clockwork. The human fleet dropped into the end Caltha's system at extreme range, just far enough for the hub to spot them. The council defenders scrambled to send distress calls, summoning nearby fleets. But while their eyes were fixed on the black ships at the edge of the system, second human force emerged from hyperspace inside the minefield. Having mapped every deadly coordinate weeks earlier, by the time the reinforcements arrived, the fuel hub was gone. Its storage tanks ruptured in a chain of blinding explosions that lit the void. The human fleet vanished into hyperspace before the council could fire a single shot. Another critical artery had been severed. That night, aboard the Vengeance, Kane stood alone at the viewport, watching the stars drift past. He knew the council was adapting. Every battle they fought taught the enemy something new. But the humans had one advantage no amount of adaptation could erase. They had nothing left to lose. And in the quiet between missions, he could almost hear Earth calling to him. A memory not of destruction, but of life. Admiral Vale's voice came over the calm but edged with urgency. We've intercepted a transmission. It's strange. Put it through. The voice that filled the bridge was deep, measured, and entirely unexpected. To the human fleet, I know what the council took from you. I know what they've hidden. You want the truth. Come to the Vega Drift. But come quickly, they are coming for you. Kane's eyes narrowed. Whoever this was, they knew too much. And yet something in their tone felt familiar. Vale broke the silence. Could be a trap. Kane's voice was quiet but certain. Everything's a trap. Plot a course. In the capital, Vedran received his own message, one that made even his cold features darken. The first Project Halcyon strike teams were ready, and their leader, standing silently in the shadows, was a tall figure with human eyes, and the council's mark burned into his skin. The Vega Drift was a graveyard of ships, a place where wreckage floated in the dark like the bones of giants. Broken cruisers drifted alongside shattered freighters, their hulls torn open to the vacuum. This region had once been a crossroads of trade routes, but centuries of battles had turned it into a labyrinth of twisted metal and forgotten engines. Few ships entered it willingly. The Vengeance emerged from hyperspace at the drift's edge, engines burning faintly against the starfield. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge, scanning the shadows. Somewhere in this maze was the voice that had called to him, the one claiming to know what the council had hidden. Local scans? He asked. Captain Vale's hands moved over her console. Ghost readings everywhere. It's hard to tell what's alive and what's just debris. She paused, eyes narrowing. Wait, there. A faint beacon, 200 clicks ahead. Looks like an old freighter hull. Gain nodded. Bring us in, slow and steady, and keep weapons warm. The beacon led them to a battered ship that looked as if it had survived a dozen wars. Its plating was scorched, its engines barely functional. Yet the moment the Vengeance drew near, a docking tube extended from the freighter's side, locking into place with a hiss. Kane boarded with a small escort, boots clanging against the holodeck. Inside, the air smelled of metal and dust. Lights flickered weakly as a figure stepped out from the shadows, a tall, thin alien with pale, ridged skin and eyes that seemed too old for his face. I am Dr. Solari, the stranger said, his voice calm. And I was there when your world burned. The words hit like a physical blow, but Kane's expression didn't change. Then you're either my enemy or the only friend I've got here. Which is it? Solari's gaze held no fear. I was a scientist for the Council's Department of Strategic Threats. I told them your species should be left alone. They ignored me, and when they carried out the purge, I saved what I could. He held out a small data crystal. This contains proof and something more. The Council didn't just destroy Earth. They took survivors, hundreds of them. Children they've been. Changing them. Kane's jaw tightened. For what? Soldiers, Solari said. Loyal to the Council. Enhanced beyond natural limits. They call it Project Halcyon. Some of them don't even remember they were human. Vale's voice came over the comm in a low, urgent tone. Admiral, you need to see this. Long-range scans just picked up a massive energy surge in the capital system. Solari nodded grimly. That'll be the other thing they've hidden. The Celestial Lance. A planetary defense weapon, capable of destroying a fleet with one shot. They've kept it secret for decades. And if you mean to take the capital, they'll use it. Kane took the crystal, his fingers closing around it like a weapon. Then we make sure they fire it at the wrong target, capital of the Galactic. Council was a world of gleaming towers and endless skyways, a planet wrapped in the arrogance of absolute power. From orbit, its defense ring looked impenetrable, layered shields. Hundreds of gun platforms, squadrons of interceptors constantly on patrol. The people below believed no enemy could ever reach them. They were wrong. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge. A black wave advancing through the void.
Ow.
The Council's defenders scrambled to respond, fleets maneuvering. Into position, weapons charging. Civilian channels lit up with panic. Traffic control shouting for transports to flee to safe zones. On the Vengeance's bridge, Kane studied the formation of enemy ships. Vale, keep our main force together. No heroics. We break their shield ring, then we go for the surface. Council admirals barked orders across encrypted comms. Squadrons surged forward, their engines flaring bright, but the humans met. Them head-on rail slugs punched through cruisers. EMP bursts fried the controls of interceptors mid-flight, sending them spinning into the dark. Every move the humans made was deliberate, coordinated, and ruthless. And then, as Kane had expected, the Celestial Lance revealed itself. From deep within the capital's lower layers, a massive energy tower rose toward the clouds, its tip glowing with a sickly golden light. In orbit, the defense ring shifted to make way for its shot. Kane's eyes locked on it. There's our window, he said. Signal the Ironclad. Begin decoy maneuver. The Ironclad, a heavy cruiser built like a floating fortress, broke formation and charged straight at the capital. Its weapons blazed, drawing the attention of every gun in range. The Lance's energy core brightened to a blinding intensity. Civilian broadcasts across the system filled with awe and fear as the weapon locked on. Admiral Lance at full charge, Vale warned. Hold, Kane said quietly. His knuckles were white against the command rail. A single tone rang across every channel. The Lance fired. A column of golden light ripped upward through the atmosphere, striking the ironclad dead center. For a moment, the ship was swallowed by fire, and then it was gone, vaporized into nothingness. Gasps and cheers erupted across the capital. But in the war room of the Vengeance, Kane allowed himself the faintest of grim smiles. Decoy successful. The lance needs hours to recharge. Move in. Human dropships pierced the skies over the capital, streaks of fire cutting down through the clouds. They landed hard-armored troops spilling into the streets, the alien citizens scattered, some running, some watching in stunned silence as the soldiers advanced toward the Council's spire, the seat of power for the entire galaxy. Inside the spire, Vedran moved with the calm of a man who had prepared for this day. Around him, elite guards formed a living wall. Beside them stood a single figure in black armor, his helmet hiding most of his face. Only his eyes were visible, sharp, cold, and human. "Commander Rael," Vedran said, his voice smooth. "The time has come to show our guests the power of Halcyon." Rael inclined his head and turned toward the door. His orders were simple: find the human admiral and end him in the streets below. Kane's forces pushed closer to the spire, every block a firefight. Alien soldiers fell back under the human advance, their morale breaking faster than their lines. From above, dropships provided covering fire. Burning through barricades and fortified positions, Vale fought at Kane's side, her rifle cutting down enemies that tried to flank them. "We're inside the shield perimeter," she called over the noise. Another push, and we're at the spire gates. That was when Rael struck. He moved like a shadow through the chaos, cutting down 2 human soldiers before they could raise their weapons. Kane turned at the sound, his gaze locking with the stranger's. Something about the man's stance, his face pulled at memories buried deep. The stranger's voice was calm, almost familiar. "You're a long way from home." Admiral Kane's eyes narrowed. "And you're a long way from the truth, whoever you are." "I know exactly who I am," Rael replied, and with one swift motion, he removed his helmet. Kane froze. The face beneath was one he had not seen in more than 20 years. He breathed. The man's jaw tightened. "That name means nothing to me. I am Commander Rael of the Galactic Council. You are my enemy." In that moment, the siege of the capital stopped mattering. Kane's mind was pulled back to Earth's last days, to the chaos, the evacuation ships, and the desperate scramble to save children from the Council's fire. Jace had been one of them, Kane's younger brother. The shock lasted only a heartbeat. Rael moved, and Kane barely blocked the strike. The two circled each other in the smoke-filled street, each blow faster and harder than the last. Round them, soldiers on both sides held their fire, watching the duel. Rael fought with precision.
Ow.
Every strike drilled into him by the Council's training. But Kane fought with something no program could create: raw, unbroken will. Still, Rael was faster, stronger, enhanced beyond human limits. It was a fight Kane might not win. Above, the sky darkened as the celestial lance's core began to recharge. The capital burned, even from orbit. The fires could be seen curling through the streets like veins of molten light, swallowing whole districts beneath the smoke. The human fleet hung above the chaos, a black and silver wall of destruction there. Weapons silent for the moment. It had not come to destroy everything, not yet. The real blow was still to come. The galaxy was about to see it. Inside the council chambers, panic was no longer whispered. It was shouted. Alien leaders ran between consoles, voices breaking over the sound of distant explosions. Their guards stood tense, clutching their rifles, knowing they would not survive if the humans breached the building. Even here, at the very heart of the galaxy's power, Council felt small, in the shadows outside the chamber. The human admiral walked through the marble corridors with his strike team, every step echoing against the high walls. His armor was matte black, scratched and scarred from countless battles. His visor reflected only the cold, burning light of the fires outside. The air inside the building was thick with fear, and it was not just the aliens who felt it. Deep inside him, old memories stirred. He remembered his homeworld before the purge. He remembered the blue skies, the sound of his mother's voice, the smell of the sea. He remembered the day those skies turned to fire, and the alien fleet came without warning, erasing cities in white-hot flashes. He remembered hiding under rubble for 3 days before rescue came, Remember the promise he made, that one. Day, the galaxy would feel what humanity had felt, and now that promise was almost complete. The first layer of council guards fell silently, their weapons useless against human stealth armor. They never saw the shapes in the dark until they were already gone. Step by step, the Admiral's team moved deeper into the core, heading for the inner sanctum. The Council's leaders were waiting there, surrounded by the last of their defenses. But the humans were not the only ones closing in. Deep beneath the Council chambers, in a hidden vault known only to the highest-ranking officials, something stirred. It had been waiting for decades, built in secret after the Purge, forged from human DNA mixed with alien enhancements. They were called the hybrids, designed to be stronger, faster, and utterly loyal to the Council. They were the galaxy's hidden weapon, never used. Because the Council had believed the Purge had ended the human threat forever. Until now, the Admiral's earpiece clicked. "Admiral," a voice from the fleet said, "you should see this." Glanced at the hologram on his gauntlet. Dozens of armored figures were rising from underground platforms, their movements precise, their faces hidden behind masks. Their armor was unlike any alien design, yet it was not purely human either. He recognized the way they moved it was the way humans moved in battle, the same way he did. And then his eyes froze on one of them. He knew that face. The mask lifted for only a moment, revealing sharp eyes beneath a scarred brow. It was a face from a photograph he had carried as a boy, a face he had thought lost in the fires of the Purge. His brother. The Admiral's heart pounded once, hard enough to hurt. He had not spoken his brother's name aloud in decades. He had imagined finding his remains, perhaps one day standing over a grave that did not exist. But here he was, alive, and armed, standing with the Council's forces. The cum channel opened again, but this time it was not his crew speaking. "It was his brother, Admiral," the voice said, calm and clear. "You shouldn't have come." For a long moment the Admiral said nothing. "Then they told me you were dead. They told me you abandoned me," his brother replied, stepping forward, the firelight catching the alien alloy in his armor. "They told me you left me to burn with the rest of them, but the Council saved me. They gave me a purpose, gave me the truth." "That's not the truth," the Admiral growled, but the rage in his voice was tangled with grief. "They took you. They turned you into this." "I am what I was meant to be," his brother said, "stronger than you, stronger than any human. I am here to end this war before you destroy everything." The strike team spread out, weapons raised, but the Admiral held up his hand. "He's mine." Around them, the sound of battle drew closer, distant gunfire, the thud of explosions, the scream of collapsing walls. The humans and hybrids circled each other like predators, their weapons low but ready. The galaxy's fate was now balanced on a razor's edge, and both brothers knew it. The first move came fast. His brother lunged, his speed almost inhuman. Striking with a blade made from alien steel, the Admiral blocked, the clash sending sparks into the marble air. Every blow was heavy, each strike a test of strength and will. "You're fighting the wrong war," his brother snarled, driving him back. "You're blinded by the past. The Council can bring peace. They've kept order for centuries." Order. The Admiral's voice was raw. "They burned worlds. They erased children. They called it peace because they weren't the ones screaming." The duel raged down the corridor, shattering statues and columns as they fought. Outside, the capital's skies lit with streaks of fire as drop pods fell, carrying more human troops into the streets. Inside, alien officials tried to flee, only to find themselves trapped between collapsing walls and the human advance. And, in the chaos, the sympathetic alien scientist moved. He had been waiting for his chance, hiding in the shadows, carrying a small device no larger than his palm. It was not a weapon, it was evidence. Data from the Purge, unedited, untouched. Proof of the truth the Council had buried. If he could get it to the humans, the entire galaxy would know. The duel between the brothers broke through into the Council chamber itself. Leaders shrank back, their eyes wide, watching the two humans fight with a fury no alien could match. The floor cracked beneath their feet. The air burned with the heat of their weapons. At last, the Admiral disarmed his brother, pressing the edge of his blade to his throat. But his hand trembled. "End it," his brother said, meeting his gaze. "Prove you're no different from the monsters you hunt." The Admiral hesitated. Every instinct screamed to finish it, to end the threat. But the boy he once knew was still there, buried under layers of lies and alien control. He could see it in his eyes. Outside, the fleet's voice crackled in his ear. "Admiral, we've broken the last line of defense. The capital is yours." But the victory felt hollow. The Admiral lowered his blade. "I'm not like them," he said quietly. "And I never will be." His brother stared at him for a long, tense moment, then looked past him to the council leaders. Something changed in his expression. "You should have killed me," he said. And then he turned his weapon on the council. Blaster fire erupted. Leaders fell. The chamber became a storm of chaos, with humans and hybrids turning together on the council guards. The scientists stepped forward in the confusion, slipping the data core into the Admiral's hand. "Show them," the scientist said. "Show the galaxy what really happened." The Admiral looked at the device, at his brother, at the burning capital beyond the windows. The war was almost over, but the truth was only beginning to rise. And somewhere deep inside, he knew the final reckoning was still to come. The capital was no longer a city, it was a battlefield soaked in fire and ash. The once proud towers lay shattered, their silver glass raining down onto streets filled with smoke and screams. The sky burned with streaks of tracer fire and explosions that echoed through the atmosphere like thunder. The war that had been fought in shadows for decades was now plain for all to see in the command chamber of the Vengeance. Admiral Kane stood silent, staring at the live feed streaming from the surface below. His armor was scorched, his face marked. By days without rest, around him, the remaining crew moved with weary precision, their eyes locked on the screens. The data core given by the alien scientist pulsed softly in his palm, a beacon of hope or a seed of ruin. The transmission had begun. Across the galaxy, every open frequency, every holographic billboard, every public communication channel flooded with the truth the Council had hidden: the purge of Earth, the enslavement of survivors, the twisted experiments of Project Halcyon. The footage was raw and undeniable: burning cities, children torn from their families, bodies altered beyond recognition. For some, the revelation was a shock so deep it shattered their faith in the Council's rule. For others, it ignited rage and rebellion, sparking protests and uprisings on dozens of worlds. The once unchallenged power of the Galactic Council trembled like a dying star, but the war was not yet over. On the streets of the capital, Admiral Kane and his brother, the hybrid commander known as Rail, fought side by side amid the ruins. Their past was a river of pain and betrayal, but in this moment, survival was all that mattered. Their enemies came from every corner. Council loyalists desperate to turn the tide. Enhanced soldiers bred for violence, and merciless machines unleashed to crush the rebellion. Kane's voice was steady, cutting through the chaos. "We need to reach the central command node. That's where they control the planetary defenses." Rail nodded. "I'll clear the path." Together, they moved through shattered corridors, their weapons blazing. The Council's elite guards fell before them, surprised by the ferocity of their former prisoner. Rail's enhancements gave him strength beyond any normal human. But Kane's skill and determination were an equal match. When they reached the central node, the room was a fortress of steel and firewalls. But Kane had a key, one embedded deep in the data core's memory. He connected it to the console, bypassing layers of encryption with ease. The defenses flickered and died. Outside, the planetary shield began to collapse. The skies cleared for the first time in weeks, revealing the stars above, and then the transmission changed. A face appeared on every screen: Vadran, the silver-skinned council leader, his expression cold but defiant. "You may expose us, human," he said, "but you will never break the order that holds this galaxy together." The feed cut. A roar erupted from the capital's surface as the Council's final weapon activated in ancient doomsday.
Light.
Device hidden beneath the city, the ground trembled, buildings shook, and a terrible pulse radiated outward. Disrupting all electronic systems nearby, Kane's suit alarms blared. "They're trying to destroy the city and us," Rail growled, charging toward the devices. "Core, we have to stop it." The brothers fought through the final wave of defenders, reaching the heart of the weapon just as it powered to full capacity. With moments left, Rail used his strength to pry open the control panel, while Kane jammed a pulse disruptor inside. The machine shuddered, its energy fading to nothing. Silence fell. The capital was saved. In the quiet aftermath, the brothers stood, side by side, watching as the first human reinforcements landed on the surface soldiers. Engineers and diplomats ready to rebuild and to hold the galaxy accountable. Kane looked to Rail, his voice rough but certain. "The past didn't break us. It made us stronger." Rail nodded. "Now we build a future they cannot erase." As dawn broke over the ruined city, the embers of a new dawn glowed brighter than any star.